This is Talking Hardcore, the podcast for people who love hardcore history.
You study history because it allows us to understand the present and prepare for the future.
I'm not trolling.
And I love it.
I'm just pointing out where they're wrong.
The Talking Hardcore podcast is presented by Ace Industrial Solutions. Are you in need of skilled trade professionals for your next project? Look no further. Specializing in commercial and industrial buildouts, floor coatings and coverings, high-speed concrete polish, floor cleaning, shot blasting, painting, energy efficiency, and pallet racking. With a proven track record of excellence, they have become the industry leader. To find out more, please check the link in the description. Hi, everybody. You're watching Talking Hardcore. This is a little bit different. This is going to be a short episode. Due to the recent events in Israel, it inspired me to want to put something, just say something to the rest of you, to anybody who's bothering to listen to this. Last week we recorded a trivia episode on Ghosts of the Ostfront. And Matt said something there that I think is very relevant to what just happened this weekend. So right now I'm going to put a clip in there because that podcast hasn't even come out yet. It's coming out on Tuesday. But here's the clip. You're going to watch the clip. And here, all right. So you're going to watch the clip. And then we're going to talk to Matt how that relates to everything that happened this weekend. So, okay, 1 second.
Well, Ghosts of the Ostfront to me is the most important because it happened so recently and was so cataclysmic. The Holocaust, the breakdown of civilization across a wide swath of the world. These things have not ended in our society. They will happen again. Human nature is very predictable, and there are many lessons to be learned from this story. Dan presents it in a way that is compelling, but also very, very, very important to remember. And out of all of his work, I believe that Ghosts of the Ostfront should be memorized and passed down from generation to generation as an oral history, because it is that important for our civilization.
Okay, Matt. I had just cut that clip up on Friday, and then I wake up yesterday or sometime yesterday, I started seeing all the news, and then all day today on Twitter, seeing all the videos and news. I try not to watch too many of the videos because, wants to be depressed, right?
Well, it's tough to watch.
Yeah, and that the reason I want to talk to you is because this really seems to tie into what you said in that clip. This is still a continuation of the terror that happened in World War II. That's what happened this weekend, is continuation of that.
Plus
if people just remembered how bad it can get and how bad people are, maybe we would be on guard and these things would happen less. Anyway, what do you think, Matt?
I think there's two things here. I think that when you're looking at this from afar, you do need to learn and know the history behind what's going on over there so you can understand why it's happening. And then just like we're talking about, or will be aired that we were talking about, these people are living through it every day. The history of thousands of years and of recent decades.
Recent events.
Right.
Yeah.
Every single day in the streets of their cities, they're face to face with each other. There are family deaths. There are blood feuds. It is not something a normal person can understand unless you really study it, or if you have family members over there. Or if you live in a country where that kind of thing happens. They're very much living through the history of the past 1,000 years, and we do need to understand and appreciate the events that led up to this, including the American side of the intervention in all of this.
Right.
For sure.
Nothing happens in a vacuum. But so if you haven't In the description of this video is also going to be a link to Dan Carlin, who just put out a pretty substantial tweet thread about this, and he usually avoids tweeting about a lot of this kind of current stuff. But I thought, to me, his opinion on this seemed to be the most nuanced, complete breakdown of basically the way I think it, what is right. What I feel like he nailed it. Out of any of the stuff I've read all day, he seemed to nail it the most. And so take a look at that. Matt, what are your thoughts on Dan's thread?
I've had a sympathy with the Palestinian people for a number of years. I've read a lot about that. There's a great book called Living by the Sword by Stephen Green that's the history of America's relationship with Israel and our funding and support. Just one very quick example. Back during the Vietnam War, we were supplying Israel with the F-1A1 fighter bomber before our people in Vietnam received them, and our officers were begging our own government for that weapon system when we were giving it to Israel first. That's just,
Right.
and stuff like that. $3 billion a year, a large portion of that slated for military funding. This is America aside from this whole thing. Speaking to what Dan spoke of, you can have sympathy for the Palestinian people. Israel is pushing its settlements further and further out, occupying territory. I have a very heartrending story that will bring it down to the human level for that. But you can love and respect and have sympathy for the Palestinian people and recognize that what Hamas is doing right now is absolutely committing an atrocity. It is shock tactics. It's for shock value. They know that they're looking for sympathy and funding from other terrorist-minded nations, and
Right.
the Palestinian people and the Israeli people are going to suffer for this. They claim to represent the Palestinian people, but they don't. They've hijacked the representation of those people and
Right.
are claiming to act in their name when really they're just causing further damage.
Right.
And it's that mentality is only going to make things worse. Not for just Hamas, like not for targeted attacks on Hamas, but the population as well. People that have absolutely nothing to do with any of this. It's a self-replicating system, and
Yeah.
it's going to hurt. It hurts everybody on all sides. So it hurts the Hamas is hurting the civilians on the Israeli side, which in turn is going to hurt their own civilians as well.
Right. I think there's one thing to me that I keep coming back to, because you hear people say all the time, Israel's an apartheid state,
But it's not. It's not.
and the point to me is that none of this would happen to Israel if they really were the bad guys that they're made out to be, because they would just go in there and wipe them all out. Like they could, they don't, right? They have the military capability. They could be the bad guys. They could.
Yeah, but at the
They try not to be.
But
that
you know
doesn't
why
mean they're
they try-
perfect.
you
And
know
of
why
course,
they
Matt,
try
you're
not to
right. But one second. Of course, Matt, you're right. There is perfectly easy to have sympathies with the Palestinian people, because the people who don't support Hamas, the people who aren't doing the awful shit, they're going to get stuck in the middle, and that bites. It sucks. But I do like to point out that if Israel was as bad as they are made out to be by some of the fringe people, then this never would happen. Because they would come down so hard last time it happened, and the time before that, it would never happen again.
Yeah,
You could do it, 'cause you could go-
any Palestinians left.
Right.
But-
Historically,
but the
what
reason-
happens, right?
the
What did the
reason-
Romans do to Judah when they rebelled and wouldn't? I'm listening to Pex. That's what he was talking about there. They destroyed it and scattered it to the wind,
Yeah, but
right?
the reason why the Israelis aren't going to do this is the Holocaust still holds true in their hearts.
That's probably true.
So that's
and
why
also because there's a major amount of Arab allies that would probably join in the fight, and
that already
because-
happened once.
Yeah, but they kicked
Yeah.
all their asses once.
That's how
Right.
That's how Palestine lost its state.
Right.
And now Islamabad has nuclear weapons. But
That's
I
true,
think
too.
you're right, George. Is
That's
that
true.
they could, they have the capability to enact overwhelming force, and they don't. Hamas doesn't want peace.
No.
There are legitimate
No.
people in Palestine who want peace. on the ground civilians, and there are legitimate people in the representation of their society, government, who do want peace, and there might be a solution there. Same thing on the other side. Hamas is ensuring that will never happen.
That's their goal, because they lose power. They lose power. When there's peace, then Hamas doesn't get any more funds. Then those people would have to get real jobs. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
Instead, right now, there's little girls being raped. Right now.
Like I said,
right now. There's little Israeli girls being raped.
Kidnappings happening, and yeah.
Right now, that you can guarantee that's happening right now somewhere
the news stories
in Palestine.
Horrible.
There's some Israeli girl getting raped.
She
probably saw a sibling get murdered, and then now she's getting raped. And that has
been on the ground for a long time. I mean, there's no. Right. I mean, there hasn't been a real Palestinian force capable of taking on Israel. So it's snatch and grab, tunnel, pop up, snatching an Israeli soldier, pull him down, kidnap him, ransom him. It's very
but
much
at least
guerrilla
if you're going
warfare
after
at a large scale.
soldiers. At least if you're going after soldiers. What they did was 9/11.
Right.
What they did was 9/11.
You're
that's
absolutely
what they did.
correct. And that's what Dan focused on right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he nailed it.
Yeah, targeting civilians.
But the reason this popped up and this occurred to me and what I've been thinking about all day with relation to that clip is because I was thinking about Leslie's grandma, who, again, I interviewed and we've talked about on the podcast before. She was a German from Yugoslavia, okay? At the end of the war, they were fleeing from the Russians, and the Russians were going through town, raping all the women and doing awful stuff because that's what the Nazis did to them, right? And it just keeps going, perpetuating itself. That's what happens.
Very, very relevant to Ghost of the Ostfront. What does he talk about with the partisans, with the Nazis dealing with the partisans? They kept thinking that if we punish these people collectively as individuals, as civilians, then they'll stop doing but it just made it worse. It makes you hate them worse. And there's some disconnect there. I mean, I think the Nazis truly didn't understand that because not to connect the Nazis with the German army of World War I.
But it was their culture. No, but that was the same.
But they did the same thing, and Dan points it out in Blueprint for Armageddon, that they punished the civilian population thinking that it would quell the rebellion, and it made it worse, right?
Well,
the same thing. Now Hamas is punishing the civilian population, but they don't think it's going to solve anything. They know it's going to make it worse. Right. That is their goal.
Right. Yeah, they just don't care.
But what the hell do you do? But what the hell do you do if you're Israel right now? They have your civilians. They have your civilians.
They're hitting them hard.
How could they not? And at least they're going to do their best to not hurt women and children. But Hamas is going to use them as human shields,
munitions, and morality.
But they are still going to hit civilians.
They have to, and there's going to be collateral
Hamas
damage.
They're using them as human shields, knowing that they will.
Yeah,
that's what bad guys are going to do.
Yeah. Israel is protecting itself. Hamas is doing this for the world to look at them and all their messed up allies who get off on this kind of stuff, saying, "Look what they're doing to us." You know what I mean? It's optics. It's optics, and it's disgusting. It's really disgusting.
It is because now there's innocent lives just destroyed, and we're lucky that this doesn't happen more often. Because historically, this kind of shit happened all the time.
It's par for the course.
The best thing that can happen from this is something that Dan said in that tweet thread, that the Palestinian people need to excise Hamas from any form of representation of their society.
But they're not gonna.
Yeah, but they're not going to, because then Hamas will act out against their own people and they'll kill their own people.
Because if you're a Palestinian person, what happens if you say, "We need to stop Hamas"? Somebody from Hamas shoots you.
What happens if you're a German citizen and you say the Nazis need to go? It's the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean, but people did it. People fought against it and they died, and it just
But at least they did it. But the real problem is,
wait a minute.
Like Dan talks about. The real problem is, it's not that they kill you.
Right.
It's that they kill your family.
Yeah, I know.
They rape your daughter. They rape your wife.
It's just like in Afghanistan. The Taliban was doing the same stuff to the Afghani forces fighting against the Taliban. Right. They were doing the same thing in Afghanistan. And then if you want to talk about like the Germans would just get rid of you. They wouldn't kill your family. They might kill you.
Right.
There's
That's true. The
depending
Russians
on
would-
how bad you were, they might kill you, or they just demote you and you wouldn't even be a part of the military anymore.
Right.
That was what the Germans would
You're
do.
right.
I mean, they wouldn't just they wouldn't just kill
Unless
you.
you took
and-
up arms.
Yeah, unless whatever. Like
But the
Valkyrie.
Russians, that's what they would do. They would disappear
Oh
your
well,
ass.
yes, and your families. They don't
Yeah,
care.
and
They
your
disappear
family would
you
be
and
left to
your
not know if you were dead. So you weren't a martyr, you were a ghost.
Yeah.
If Israel is very discriminate about this and is able to take out Hamas leadership and really make a concerted effort to rout out their entire operation, for a long term, I mean, there might be some kind of a change enacted where something positive could happen with that amount of force
Seems like-
implemented from their side.
Seems like
that's
most
just-
likely what they're doing is they're buying themselves 15 years, maybe, if they can do it
Maybe.
that good. Because
Yeah.
then the people who they're killing now, that's when their sons will be old enough to
That is
take up
what
the rally.
happens.
But
It
you
is
guys
a
don't.
horrible cycle of violence.
Yeah.
Do you guys? I mean, honestly, do you think that? Do you think the U.S. government doesn't know where the head of Hamas is at all time?
No, I bet you they don't.
I
It's not.
guarantee you they do.
Our knowledge is not near as strong as we think it is.
Oh, I have. I
No, because
completely
they
disagree.
know we have satellites, so they know how to shuffle cars and do all kinds of shit. Because if we knew, then Israel would have already killed them. Because we would have told them, and they would have just dropped a bomb. They would have did a tactical bomb, and that guy would be dead. Trust, our capabilities are immense, but you can overestimate them, dude. I'm telling you, there's no way we know where those guys all are, because they're not dumb enough to pop up in the open all the time.
If you don't think I disagree.
I think you're overestimating the tech. The technology has that capability, but the enemy knows that. So they're not dumb enough to just let you track them that easy.
Well, they got to be somewhere.
Yeah, but that's the point, is we won't wipe out a whole block to kill the guy.
No, we won't, but we'll know he's on that block.
Yeah, but there's still ways to get around. Anyway,
Anyway, sorry.
we're getting into the weeds. Matt, thanks for coming on. Do you have anything you want to say
Absolutely.
before we log off?
As soon as Israel starts treating the greater population of Palestine as Hamas, they've lost the war. Hamas knows that. They may even be counting on it. That's why they went so far with the atrocities. Can I end really quickly with the story that's lived in my heart for 20 years?
Sure.
I read a news article, and this is literally 20 years ago. I have never forgotten a single detail of it. I have no idea what sort of conclusion can be drawn from this. This is
Right.
merely an illustration of what life is like over there and what is causing these things to happen. There was a boy named Mohammed El Melfal. I will never forget this boy's name as long as I live. He was 15 years old. He lived in the Palestinian refugee camp of Beit Lahia in the Gaza Strip. Now, the Israelis were starting to move settlements, into that area, and they had moved in the tanks, which were M1 Abrams, M1A1 Abrams tanks, made by America. Okay, so they had scared all the teachers out of the school. Muhammad's father wanted him to get an education, so he hired a private math tutor. Every morning, Muhammad would grab his books, go off, and go see his math tutor. This day, he did not do that. He grabbed his books, said goodbye to his family, met his friends, and snuck around the block and went to go throw rocks at Israeli tanks. He was shot in the back with a .50 caliber machine gun. That is the kind of stuff that's happening over there every single day. Who did that kid's family grow up to be? Are they
Right.
justified? Is the other side justified? This is a mess. This is an absolute mess. And as long as it continues at this level, it will continue forever. There needs to be a zoomed out solution. Hamas is maintaining it at the level of blood and guts. And
Right.
it's very difficult to have an actual conversation when things like this are going on.
Right. But it's important to try. There's nuance on these things. You can recognize that there should be a solution to the Gaza Strip that the Palestinians can live with as well. And also admit that fucking Hamas are awful and terrorists, and we should be doing everything we can to make sure none of our funds go to them.
Right.
No
And
taxpayer money's going
That's a
to
good
them.
point. Yeah.
We need to be very careful about that, and we should be paying attention to that kind of stuff, right?
But it's tough.
And you have people always just want to take one side or the other and say this is how it is without the nuance. But nuance is real. Things aren't black and white. Israel's not an apartheid state, and they're not the devil.
What the difficulty is, George, is what is Israel to? Okay, if you wanted peace tomorrow, it's not like Israel can just say,
Right.
okay, we're going to give you your country back, even though you lost it in a war to us.
Right.
They're not going to do that.
But
they
even
can't
if they
do
did,
that.
even if they did, it wouldn't solve it.
You're right. It wouldn't solve that because there'd still be skirmishes along the border of whatever country you gave. I mean,
Yep.
whatever was divided upon. But they're not going to do that anyway. They're not giving up that land.
But even if they did, it would not solve the problem. So
Okay.
how do you solve the problem?
You can't solve 2,000 years of conflict.
Well, you could pretty
you
easily.
You
You
could.
know how you do it? You'd
Total
have to kill
war.
everybody on one side,
It'd be total war.
but you'd have to kill all of them,
Yep.
and that's not good.
But then they're going to fight with the Lebanese.
That's
Lebanese,
not good.
They're,
That's what I'm saying.
They're
You
already
have to-
sending more troops to the
You have
their
to
border
do
with
what the
Lebanon.
Romans would have done.
Yeah.
The Romans wouldn't have put up
They'd have
with
been
this shit
total
over
war.
and over again. They wouldn't have. And I'm not saying that's the solution because I don't think that's good, and I'm not rooting for that. But that's what you would have to do if you wanted this to end now.
What is the equivalent of a third-party occupying force that lays down strict laws and enforces them at the pain of immediate death?
I don't know.
I mean, let's remove death and call it legislature. You know, like America has been trying forever to negotiate these things, and
Right.
groups like Hamas
Yeah.
are doing their best to ensure it doesn't happen. That's
Right.
what's happening. Let's
So
hope-
what
let's
about
hope that
okay?
Israel-
But yeah. Go ahead, Matt. Finish all you're
Okay.
saying.
Let's just hope that Israel is targeted and discriminative and intelligent
Right.
in its response. It will be appropriate. There will be collateral damage, unfortunately.
Yep, and get
But let's hope
ready
that
to
with-
see those videos.
With the kinetic side of Israel and hopefully the intelligent financial and diplomatic sanctions that America is able to impose on the people who fund Hamas, that something can be alleviated from the situation. The people are suffering.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Thanks for jumping on. I know this was short notice. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
right on,
buddy.
man.
Thanks for
All right,
watching.
guys. Peace
All right,
out.
guys, check out the Discord. Come on into the Discord channel. Typically, it's not politics, but there's a Talking Hardcore thread on the Hardcore History Discord that Matt started. If you guys want to have a discussion about this, let's do it. Be civil. There's nuance in the world. Let's talk. Thanks,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.